Beep. Oh, there we go. Yay. I was just waiting for things to go live, and I was going beep, beep. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to Training Talk here on Personal Defense Network. I'm Grant Cunningham, and this is the show where we talk about you, about your life, and how to protect it. In the next hour, we're going to explore how you can prepare and equip yourself to face your own worst-case scenario and keep you and your family safe from harm. Now, we don't do religion or politics on the show, and you're not going to hear like conspiracy theories or fringe commentary, just reliable information that you can use to keep you and your family safe. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you're new to the show, welcome. I'm glad you tuned in. You know, it's kind of funny. I mean, we're in the digital age, right? I mean, this is being webcast, and we're still saying tune in. And that's kind of interesting. There are a lot of other things, like people still talk about taping, taping video. Well, we don't use tape anymore, but we still talk about taping. That's kind of odd, isn't it? But anyway, I'm glad you showed up or logged on. That just doesn't sound right. I'm glad you tuned in. I'm old and I admit it. So, and if you're a returning viewer, thanks for coming back and spending some time here and learning about self-defense and all the things that you can do to defend yourself. And we're going to have a great conversation tonight. Before we do, I want to tell you about a couple of things. Of course, if you're a regular here on Personal Defense Network, you may be aware that we have something called premium membership. And premium membership at Personal Defense Network gives you access to all kinds of extra stuff that you don't get on the public side of the site. I'll talk about that a little later in the show, so stay tuned for that. And tonight, we're going to have an interesting conversation. If you've tuned in before, there it goes again. If you tuned in before, you may have seen my guest tonight, Julie Leffler of Mid-Ohio IMB and the newly formed Women's Defense Network. And she is now also on the faculty at the Ohio State University. I was told if I didn't put the in first, like locusts would descend on me, and it was just awful. So the Ohio State University, and which is her newest position. And Julie, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So do I have to call you professor now?
Do you want to call me professor right now?
Well,
you don't have to. I'm not technically. Okay, so technically I am not a professor. I do not have a PhD in anything. I am on the faculty of the Ohio State University, and I'm teaching classes for college credit. So whatever you want to do. Yeah.
I mean, it's that whole, Gilligan's Island thing, right? And the trouble, if you're the professor, I'm really worried about who Marianne is at that point. Just saying, right?
Yeah. Okay. So who are you?
I would think I would be Gilligan.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with that.
Either that or Mrs. Howell. I mean, I've got the hair.
Lovey.
One or the other.
Yeah.
Anyway, I used to actually be able to do a Jim Backus impersonation that I can't do ever since my voice changed. But kind
of interested to hear it though.
Yeah, we'll try that someday when we've been drinking.
Drinking what, kombucha?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Although tonight I am having some delicious water. Of course, our contributor Caleb Causey always tells us to drink water. So
we never drink enough. Thank you, Caleb.
Drink enough. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking, since you teach at the Ohio State University, we're going to talk a little bit about self-defense for college students. And I don't have kids. A lot of my friends, my peers have kids going to college now, or sometimes graduated from college. And like my neighbor, he and I are the exact same age, and his kids are, I think his last kid is finally graduating from college this year. Sure. It's crazy. Makes me feel older than I actually am.
Tell me about it. I'm sitting there with these It's sometimes 17-year-old, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and I'm having to tell them I graduated from the same school they're going to right now and over 20 years ago. I tell them not to do the math, but, you know.
So with a lot of people sending their kids off to college,
Mm-hmm.
and I know when I went to college in, let's just say I started in college in the very late 70s.
It was pretty groovy back then, huh?
It was, yeah. um, and I mean, going to college, you get to go to the big city, but I can remember thinking of college as sort of a safe haven, I guess. And I think even today, that is the general feeling that you get. I mean, you go to the campus, you have the tree lined campus and these stately buildings and the ivy and all that kind of stuff, and it feels like a really safe, secure environment.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't, is it?
Not really. And the reporting that's being done by all universities is skewed. First of all, it's only based on the reported information. So there's, and there's statistics out there about the number of events that have been reported, the ones that haven't been reported, and it's more oftentimes than not, people don't report things that happen, and when they do, universities unfortunately are discouraging people from following through with a report, maybe retracting the report, maybe not taking it all the way, because it hurts recruiting numbers. And let's face it, it's all about the mighty dollar when it comes to universities, well, or anything for that matter. There was a documentary that was done a few years ago, which I know was on Netflix, and I'm not sure if it is anymore, and it's called The Hunting Ground. And it went and followed a couple of situations on, I think, at least 4 college campuses around the United States, East Coast to West Coast, and everything in between. And it showed and identified specific situations where rapes or sexual violence had occurred, and someone wanted to report the information, and how they were treated when they reported and what the outcomes were, and they weren't good. And this tends to be the documentary. Sometimes documentaries are based on small bits of information that are blown way out of proportion, but unfortunately, that's not the case here. More oftentimes than not, people are discouraged from following through with a report if they even make it to that point.
Just a note, for those of you who are Netflix subscribers, I just checked, and The Hunting Ground is still available on Netflix, and it is now on my watch list.
Good.
Because I definitely want to see this. Interestingly enough, this is not actually all that surprising to me. I've known a couple of people who attended very well-known schools,
Mm-hmm.
and who told me point blank that the universities manipulated the crimes that were reported,
Mm-hmm.
so that it made the campus look like a safe area, even though in one case the school is in a very, very bad part of this one town, this one city.
Yeah.
So this is not unheard of. Apparently,
No.
It goes on all over the country.
It does. It does. And with some of the information that I found out, even in the first 4 weeks of teaching these classes, I have 80 young ladies in my classes this semester. 3 classes I'm teaching on a part-time basis this semester, full-time starting in August, where I'll be teaching 12. But just in this little bit of time, I have found information that obviously not scientific, and yet I'm doing my own research in this own little bubble. So, I mean, I think it's validated as far as I'm concerned, because it's coming from students right on campus, and they're telling me things that are making me understand from a completely different level why this submissive, this fearful, this uninformed attitude is there and is present, because I certainly never understood that. I certainly wasn't ever that way. But college campuses today are very different than they were before. I don't know about when you went to campus, but if you went out and you partied, you were usually with, a group of your friends or groups of groups, and 10 to 12 of you, you're heading out, you're hanging out together, you're talking, you're yucking it up, and you're kind of, watching out for everybody. But today, in today's universities or college settings, the isolation is so great because of earbuds, because of social media, because of not interacting. Shoot, I mean, the eye contact. I'm always watching. I'm always paying attention to what's going on. And I park on one part of campus. I have to take a bus to the RPAC, which is the recreational facility where I teach. And I'm watching and observing these students and some teachers as well. And, the eye contact is not there. They make sure they don't trip getting onto the bus. They find their seat, they plop their butts down. They either have their earbuds in already, or they take their iPhone out or whatever mobile phone, and they shove their nose into that, and they're just in their own little bubble. There's no communication. As a matter of fact, today I could only catch one person's glance, and she was directly across from me, and it was, she almost looked away when we made eye contact until I smiled. And then she smiled back. And I thought, what a shame. Nobody has that interaction anymore. And the isolation is growing. And in one article that I had them read, and I had them do their first assignment, I had them write. The article was a blog that I had written, and it's called "You Can't Win Alone." And it was talking about isolation versus having people help you in whatever situation you might be in. And quite frankly, all of the assignments, I read each and every one of them, and I was so saddened and so disheartened by what I got. I would say between 80 to 90% of the response was people telling me, these females telling me how lonely they were, how alone they felt. Right. That was the exact same reaction that I had. And I thought, well, no wonder. No wonder they're not getting the information, nor are they in a position where they're ready to receive that information of self-worth, self-confidence, standing up for yourself, fighting back. They're not mentally there. Not there.
So you put together you basically put a whole bunch of people who are not yet really
mature.
I'm trying to, what's that?
Mature.
I'm thinking like socially aware. I'm not sure what a good word for that is, but not really socially aware, isolated. They're away from their friends, they're away from their families, and you put them into a relatively confined space. And it's like, a hunting ground. There you go.
Yeah,
it really is. And this is what, if you're watching this and you're sending your kids to college, maybe they're about to go out to college, maybe they're just there. This is what they have to look forward to. And unfortunately, stuff does happen, a lot of stuff, and it's not just innocent stuff, is it?
Oh no. People of all walks of life, people of all walks of different experiences, different cultures, different attitudes, are all coming together. And and that's a great thing. And you get to learn, and you get to, I mean, not to say that all the time there's these bad things that happen, because quite frankly, we all had good experiences in college. But when we're talking about personal defense and violence of any nature, whether it's sexual or otherwise, you get these people together who may not understand one another, who may be in different mental states. I mean, we have to consider the fact that there are people with mental disorders who may or may not have been diagnosed already, and something might trigger it, and you might have events that are happening for first time right there at a university. Certainly not blaming anything like that on there, but you also have, um, people who are already predators coming here. You also have outside university, people who don't even attend, who know the area, who are preying on the fresh blood who comes in. They might just live on the outskirts and never attend college. There's no gate keeping people out of that environment. You talk about being on campus or off campus, and it's just literally one step, one way or the other, and there you go. So, you're talking about whether it's a college student or whether it's just a sexual predator or a predator who is, like you said, going into that hunting ground because it's so easy. And you have all kinds.
It's interesting because I know a lot of this was not the case at the high school that I attended because I grew up in a small town, and so it was a very, very different sort of situation. But with a lot of kids, high school today is a relatively controlled environment. They have, locks on the doors and in some cases metal detectors and all this sort of thing. So everybody's sort of contained in an area, and for better or worse, it may be a relatively safe environment, at least in terms of attacks happen. But when you take a child who's been brought up in that sort of environment through grade school and elementary school and middle school and high school, and suddenly throw them out into a college where everything is open.
Oh yeah.
This is like sensory overload. It becomes very, very difficult for someone to navigate that and to understand what happens. So it's really on the parents, the folks that are watching, the parents, to hopefully educate your children before they get there that this is going to be a different environment.
It is a different environment, and if you have a child who is naive or sheltered, or however you want to word it, this is not the time to continue that behavior. They're going to be out in the real world anyway. You might as well prepare them now. And if they're not willing to hear what you have to say, then you need to seek out someone, a third party. I can't tell you how many private instructions I've taught before kids have gone off to college. And it might be 1, 2, 3, 5 sessions, or longer. It just depends on the student and their mindset. You got to get their mind right first before you can teach them the physical skills, or at least do them in conjunction with one another, because as you and I both know, and a lot of the people out there listening, you can't have one without the other. We can teach physical skills all day long, but if you're not prepared to use them, it really doesn't matter.
I think that's a good point, because and those of us who are part of the gun world, for lack of a better term, tend to look to hardware solutions for these things. And this is a perfect example. As adults, we're sort of used to, not all of us, and not enough, I don't think, but we're at least used to looking for trouble, or at least maybe suspecting motives and that kind of thing. We're used to dealing with people.
Right.
And in this case, in the children's case, they're not used to that yet. So instead of thinking about immediately going to a hardware solution, you do have to start with those soft, and I hate to use the word, but socialization skills.
Yes. Yeah. And you just, instead of that trigger word that we always use, that safety, personal awareness, or whatever, it makes me want to barf, but we all know what it means, threat aware, or just at least paying attention. Pay attention to what's going on around you. And quite frankly, that's a lost skill anymore. Teaching people to look outside of their own little bubble just for a little bit. Do a quick scan. Don't be paranoid. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to create a bunch of paranoid people. But I think, they need to shed that naivety, or that sheltered life, and realize that there are people out there who want to do harm to them. And that's all they want to do. or they have a power trip, or they want control. And to know that that's out there is the biggest step. A lot of times we put our blinders on and we don't want to even pay attention to that. We've got too many things going on. We're so busy, right? Especially, if you look at Facebook, everybody's so busy. But when we're really not, we're,
well, we got time to be on Facebook, so we must not be too busy.
Right. Or hey, I just got a latte or whatever it is. But there are things in life, skills that need to be acquired, whether you go to university or not. And this just happens to be what we're talking about. The environment in which we're talking about right now is university. And so we're talking about a certain group of people, teenagers, not preteens, but teens, maybe 16, 17-year-olds up to 25. Those are the most vulnerable people because they're still seeing the best in the world. They're looking through life through their rose-colored glasses. Their future is bright ahead of them. They're picking their major, what they want to do for the rest of their lives. They're meeting new friends. They're trying new things. And, they're not thinking about the bad things until they have to. Until
now, this isn't exclusively because I'm listening to the pronouns that you're using, but this isn't exclusively a female problem, is it?
No, it is not.
And I think there may be a little bit of confusion about that.
I am, yes, I'm teaching a women's self-defense class this semester. But in conjunction with that, there's a men's self-defense class right down the hallway. And the only reason they're separate is because we happen to have people who go through those classes who've already been through events. And we need to be sensitive to that. If they're coming here to learn how to be strong, we may have some drills, some physical drills, some talks, discussions that might trigger some emotions in them. And so at the college campus level, they separate them. Now, that's at level 1. And I'm already in discussions with the department because I've already revamped their curriculum. I've rewritten the curriculum for the women's self-defense. We're going to talk about a level 2 class. We're going to talk about a level 3 class. And when I have talked to them about that, I tell them I fully intend to have completely integrated classes, because I think that's important. But here at that first level, yeah, you have women's self-defense and you have men's self-defense. And think about this, Grant. You've seen some of the male students who are in that age range, and they don't have, more oftentimes than not, and again, this is a generalization, more oftentimes than not, they don't have the skills that males had 20 years ago. Because they're not thinking about that. They're brought up differently now. They're brought up more sensitive, and there's good points to that, but there's also a detriment to that. And it puts them almost on the same level playing field it all goes back to mindset. If their mind is not set in a personal defense mode, male or female, then we have some training to do.
It's funny while you're saying, men 20 years ago, and I'm thinking more like 40 years ago.
Yeah, that too.
Which is, oh my God, I'm old.
Stop it, Gilligan.
Yeah. It's funny you said, do they use the word co-ed anymore for mixed classes, or is that not?
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I just want to make sure that was still, an appropriate word in
it's great.
Yeah.
Use away.
Okay. I know, let's get this one out of the way right away, because I know that there's somebody out there who's thinking, well, what we need to do is enact concealed carry on college campuses around the country. And I know somebody's thinking of that.
Yeah, probably.
The first problem with that, of course, is that the majority of college students are under 21 years of age to begin with. They couldn't carry a gun anyway. But why is that not a solution?
Well, I think it all goes back to it could be part of the solution if somebody really wants to go there. But I think it's not the big solution. I don't think it's going to be a lasting solution because at that point, they haven't had the training to pay attention, to get their mind right. The mental and the psychological aspect is so huge at this juncture. I didn't even realize how big it was until I started teaching there. And I'm seeing we have got to start on such a very basic level with them. The gun's way up here, and they're way down here. At their knowledge of personal defense, their knowledge and awareness of the fact that it's okay to say no, their knowledge and awareness that it's okay to fight back, for crying out loud. That's where we're starting.
That's a big one, the permission to fight back.
Nobody's told them that they have that permission. Think about the schools nowadays. Think about, maybe you hear it once from your dad. Yeah, go ahead and finish the fight and I'll back you up. But it might be said in passing. It might not be backed up with any type of training. It might not be said in a consistent basis where somebody actually believes it. And there is proper training and proper wording and proper things that you have to practice, whether it's physical or mental and psychological. And there are things that you can do to get your mind right to be in the fight when you have to. That's where we have to start.
So we start with giving them permission to, and I know this is going to be taken the wrong way, but I'm going to use this word intentionally. First of all, we have to give them permission to be rude when it's appropriate.
I use the word indignant, so use rude all you want.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So we have to give them permission to be rude, to say no, to say, get the F away from me. That's sort of the first step. They have to learn that it's okay to fight back.
Yes.
Right. So once we've done that and we've talked to them about keeping a threat awareness about them and what a threat is, because I'm sure we have to teach them that too. When you start in with the physical skills, where do you start?
Well, I started with basic gross motor skills. I started talking about where the power comes from when you strike, whether it's with your feet, with your elbows, with your knees, with your fists, whether you're getting out of a wrist grab or a choke. Maybe it's not a strike. Maybe it's getting out of a situation. All of those things, you have to know how your body works. Where does that power come from? And that is where we start, because quite frankly, you may have some people go through this class who are in sports or who have been in sports, but you also have the majority of them haven't. A lot of them are from other countries. A lot of them, I have found just in my, I have 80 students, and of the 80 students, I would say 60% of them are from foreign countries where they're not taught, they have any right to stand up for themselves. Think about that. That's a huge barrier. Wow. So we get over that, and then we have to start talking about physical strength and leverage and how you can overpower someone who's stronger than you or bigger than you. And those concepts to people who've never even thought about that is very foreign. But watching their faces light up, watching, after one class, each class that I teach is an hour and 50 minutes, almost 2 hours, once a week. That's how long I have them. I get them for 14 weeks, once a week for 2 hours. So what is that, 28 hours of training? Okay. So within that 28 hours of training, I get to teach them how to hit back, how to get out of a grab, how to get out of a choke, and to watch them understand. And sometimes it's just the smallest thing I have to correct, teaching them why it's important to roll that wrist over, why it's important to follow through, like with a a golf swing or a tennis swing or a baseball bat swing, you know, shifting your weight from right to left. Once they understand all the little nuances and they get it and their eyes light up and they see how strong they are, that makes all the difference in the world. The first time. And then after that, it's a cakewalk. I'm not saying every technique is easy for them. I'm saying they understand they can do it. But you got to get them to understand they can do it first. And then after that, they believe you and they try and they do it.
How do you approach the concept of modulation? What I mean by that is an appropriate level of force, because you have everything from the obvious attack down to the guy at the party who's maybe getting a little more familiar than he should. So, those are, two different levels of force. And how do you teach them how at this stage, because they're learning so much new about social skills go along with this. But how do you teach them that at this point?
Well, I'm of the notion to go big in thought and then hone it down, because we're dealing with a group of people who aren't used to doing this, and so they're timid anyway. And if you tell them to hone it down at the beginning, you're not going to get much out of them. So when you tell them to go big and hit that, like your life depends upon it, and you're getting what you and I would consider maybe 25 to 30% power, because that's what they think they have. They don't know, they've not discovered the rest of it yet. I tend to not put the brakes on them in their thinking, but I do tell them. I start out by saying, look, you're not learning this information to be the asshole in the room. You have to understand when it's go time and when it's not. And I said, the sure way to know when it's go time is if someone puts their hands on you and you don't want them to, you own that. That is yours to do with whatever you need to do to make sure they know they did the wrong thing. And then
Okay.
we go from there.
It's interesting that you talk that you said that they're going at like 30%.
And they think they're hitting hard.
So is it hard to get them to do this to their physical true physical ability? It's not a physical problem, it's a mental problem, right?
Yes, it's a mental problem. And since everybody's different, and everybody is going to discover their strength, both internal and external, at different times, you just kind of got to wait for it. And until it comes, you keep encouraging and encouraging. And I will tell you, in a class setting, and especially with females, perhaps with males too, yeah, probably, I guess. I don't know for sure. But when one person gets it, they'll watch and they'll go, oh, okay. And then they'll learn that way. Not only from my instruction, and not because I tell them, I'm not making clones of me. Everybody's body is different, and everybody's going to do a technique a little bit different, because we're built different. We might have a little disability, we might have mobility issues, whatever it is. But for them, whatever their level of, oh, I get it now is, that's when they start turning on the power. And the way I teach the program is, we need to learn the technique first, then we're going to add the speed, then we're going to add the power. No other way. I don't want to see somebody plowing through something with poor technique. This is where we learn it, and this is where we learn it the right way, because when we go out there and fight, you and I all, and everybody else listening knows, it gets sloppy and it gets messy. And it's not in that sanitized area where we're learning and we're training. So we better do it really well there, so that we don't have to think about it and second guess ourselves when we're out there. So that's kind of how we do it.
At this level, do you broach the topic of how messy a fight can be?
Yeah, sure. Why wouldn't I?
Just asking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they have to know what they're going to be getting into. I have to, I tell them, look, if there is a blade involved, you're going to get cut. This is going to hurt afterwards. After your adrenaline dump wears off, you're going to hurt. You're going to go through mental, like down there, week 12 or 13, we talk about the aftermath. And we talk about, how you're going to deal with the second responders and how you're going to deal with the mental and the psychological and the physical pain that you're going to go through. So yeah, you have to talk about the messy so that they're prepared for it a little bit. You're never really going to be fully prepared until you go through it. But if you have some idea of what might be coming down your pipeline, it doesn't seem so scary when you get there.
Do the I keep using the word kids because anybody under about 30 is a kid to me.
Yeah.
That's one of the benefits of age. Get off my lawn. I never thought I'd be old enough to say that, believe me.
Yeah.
But one of the things, when we're dealing with kids who haven't been out to see things, does this talk of the realities of the fight surprise them? Are they maybe, do they have an image in their mind based upon all of the television and the movies that they've consumed in their life up to that point, that a fight is a relatively clean thing? You've got a clear winner and a clear loser, and because things are always sanitized, of course, in Hollywood, do they come with that sort of preconception?
Not really. Not really. I mean, they, and it's not because they've thought about it and they don't have that. It's because they haven't thought about it.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, week one, Grant, it was knowledge to some of them that while they're walking on campus, they should have one earbud out. That was not, that was knowledge. I'm telling you, Lou, we're down here. Level 1, we're down here. Some of them had heard that before, but I would say it was a 60-40 split.
And here's an example. We won't put the kids down for this because I know a lot of adults that don't get that.
Absolutely. Oh, right.
Right.
Absolutely. Yep. And if the adults aren't doing it, why would they tell the kids to?
Exactly.
Yep.
So at one point when we're talking about self-defense, at what point do tools come into this? Because we're tool users. Man is a tool using creature. And I'm sure that at this point they've never thought in terms of either dedicated or dual purpose tools that they can use for something useful and for self-defense. So where does that come into it for a college student?
No, well, it's right at the top of my list. However, I can't start teaching that until I give them the groundwork. So that I think we're assessing and we're talking about in week 10. So we'll have 3 weeks to talk about that in a 14-week class. You and I both know from prior discussion how important I feel having these improvised weapons, whether it's a flashlight or something else, available to anybody, but especially somebody on a college campus, because it's so easy to use. It's allowed, it's permitted. It's not even just permissible, but it's not illegal. And it can be used for multiple things. So, again, I'm pressing for a full 14-week class on improvised weapons, and I think we're going to get that next year. But for now, I'm constantly talking about and I'm constantly planting seeds, even if I'm just talking about today using a strike with the side of your hand from here to here. We call that a hammer fist.
Right.
But you're teaching them the body mechanics of striking this way. But Grant, look what I could have in my hand when I do that. So today, just today in class, we were practicing because they have physical skills test next week, and we were practicing the hammer fist on a downward strike and across, both right and left. And I said, now, think about this. in a few weeks, we're going to be talking about improvised weapons. What if, and this is how I posed it to him, I said, what if you did this exact same strike and you had something in your hand that was maybe made of really hard metal or something of that nature, and it was about this big, and it had light coming out of one end, and it stuck out on either side, and then you hit somebody, because they kept going, oh, that hurts my hand. And I said, well, toughen up, because you got to learn to hit. But I said, if you had something that would strike your attacker other than your hand, wouldn't that be great? And of course, they, oh, yeah. And I said, all right, well, so we're going to learn about that. That's called a flashlight. and you could just see their eyes go, oh, yeah, well, that would be really good. And so that's one thing they can use. And we talk about the umbrellas, the snow scrapers, all the things that they have available to them on college campuses, things that they can be looking for. If somebody starts thinking personal defense minded and they walk into a restaurant, a library, a room of some sort, as sanitized as everything is on a college campus, you're going to be able to find an improvised weapon if you need it. And furthermore, you're going to have 2 or 3 of them in your backpack, carried with you everywhere you go. So that excites me. And to watch them understand that concept and put it together with something that we're doing in week 4 is very exciting. And it shows me that there's hope for them to understand how to put all this together. Because one of the things I tell them is, you know what? You've got to be a critical thinker. I'm giving you all this stuff, and we're learning all these skills in isolation. And at the end of each class, we try and put them together in a scenario setting so that they understand they all fit together, but it's not A, B, C. It's here's all your information. Here's a scenario. What do you see as your openings? What can you get to first? You have to decide, how does your body work? What position are you in? Is all your weight on your left foot? Is all your weight on your right foot? I always tell them, never waste a strike. All of these little teeny tiny things that we know, they need to be taught.
You mentioned that some of them, when you were teaching them striking, talked about, oh, that's going to hurt. Do you find that fear of pain? Because we both come from a training background. We kind of look forward to, oh boy, we're gonna, it's gonna hurt, but we're gonna have fun. Yeah. Do you find a fear of pain holds them back in their training?
Yes. As a matter of fact, when and we overcome that. We overcome that objection rather quickly, because we can't move forward if we have that objection. So, of course, we're using kicking shields, which is a big, for somebody who doesn't understand what that is, it's a big torso-sized thick pad that you hold like a shield, and you hold it up close to your body, and then the other person is punching, kicking, kneeing, elbowing that, as opposed to your physical body. And I have to teach them how to hold it, of course, and then the other person that's paired with them, I teach them, okay, now ready, go. 1, and they hit. 2, and they hit. And they're going, huh, huh. And I'm like, oh, this will never do. This will never do. So I bring somebody into the center of the circle. Usually I teach in a circle so I can see everybody. And I say, okay, you come here, usually like a small person. And I'll bring them up, and I won't hit them because, again, it's not the Julie show. I don't want them. It's not my place to show them how strong I am. But what I do is usually with an open hand is I'll give it with a pretty good force. I'll just smack it on the pad right here where they have it held up here. And it startles them. It doesn't hurt them. It startles them. It's that that shock. That shock of I was just hit. Somebody just hit me. Which is another thing we have to teach them. We got to teach them how to take a hit too. And we are. And then I ask them, because everybody goes, it makes a big popping sound, because the pads are plastic or leather or whatever. And I'll say, now did that hurt? And they'll think about it. No, it didn't hurt. No, it didn't hurt. So I'll do it again. And then I tell them, look, you need to hit your opponent. You need to hit that pad as hard as you can with accuracy. We go accuracy, then speed, then power, for 2 reasons. You need to know that you can do it, and you need to show your partner that they can take a hit. So you're learning two things there at one time. But yeah, it is. It's a complete and total shock to them.
You used an interesting word a couple of minutes ago, and you used and it's something that I was thinking about when we got into this discussion on tools, and you used the word sanitized, which is a really good word. On college campuses today, I realize that things are very very different than when I went to college. But what is and what is not allowed? I mean, we know that firearms generally aren't allowed on the vast majority of college campuses.
Mm-hmm.
What about the things that we talk about all the time in the self-defense world? Things like pepper spray. Is that allowed on a campus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, my big objection to that is somebody goes and they buy it and stick it on their keychain and they never get training. As with anything, it becomes then that magic talisman that we talk about so often. And but no, you can totally have that on college campus. You can have flashlights. You can have a cutting tool. I'll put it that way. Obviously each state is different. You have to look up your state's rules. But if you're using it for something other than personal defense, what if you have a side job and you got open boxes? Or what if you've got one of those emergency tools where you may need to cut open somebody's seatbelt? You know what I'm talking about, those little utility tool things. You can have things like that. And then, of course, you can get into harder striking items. But it's not that. It's the allowed tools, the allowed items are almost secondary at this stage. We've got to get through to these students, these kids, that they have the right to fight back. That's a big issue. A big issue.
Yeah, without the knowledge and the permission to fight back, a can of pepper spray does no one any good.
No.
And that's very true. And I've been remiss. I should be using the term students instead of the term kids. So.
Well, as long as you don't say whippersnapper, we're okay.
Yeah, get off my lawn.
That's all right.
I'm getting crotchety in my old age. I'm entitled, by golly.
Oh, yeah. Are you pounding your fist over there somewhere?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. I know you are.
Rebel.
Yeah.
Quick question. Any non-traditional students in class yet?
I'm not sure what that. Yes. Like somebody 60 and above?
Oh, well, quite frankly, on a college campus, anybody 25 and above is probably non-traditional.
Well, yeah, there's at Ohio State, and perhaps it's nationwide, I don't know. There's a program called Program 60. And anybody over the age of 60 can take a college course as an auditing the class for free. And I happen to have, in my Thursday class, I have somebody from that program. And it's absolutely amazing for her when or for the rest of the students, when she shares her life experience and she adds that into the classes, because they listen to her and she'll say things like, I'm so excited she just said this today. I'm so excited to see all of you ladies. She said, ladies, I'm so excited to see all of you ladies progress in your training, because when you get out into the business world, you're going to have to be confident. You're going to have to stand up for yourself, and you're going to have to make a lot of hard decisions, and nobody's going to be there to do it for you. And so she was actually talking about, and she may not have even realized it, that mental and psychological preparation of confidence, and attributing it to the business world as opposed to just personal defense. So what we do in the personal defense world, you, me, and all the other instructors, bleeds out into the rest of life, if you think about it. And on a college setting, you have to kind of plant that seed too, so that they start thinking outside the box on where else this can help them.
See, folks, us old people are valuable, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Well, you weren't backing me up there. I was going, oh, God.
Oh, no. I was waiting for all the other, I could hear them. Yeah, of course. Yes, Grant.
I want before I finish up, I want to take a second because I promised everybody at the first that we would talk about this, about premium membership here at Personal Defense Network. You know what that is, right? And
me? Yeah, I know what that is. I'm a premium member.
Yeah, she's a premium member.
Heck yeah.
And so for those of you who have not yet signed up for premium membership at Personal Defense Network, the public side of Personal Defense Network, where you're watching the show and you're watching Rob Pincus's live show once a month, or reading all the great articles, or looking at some of the videos that we have. On the membership side, Personal Defense Network, we have just a ton more. We've got DVD length videos. Someday people are going to go, what the hell's a DVD? But for right now, we have DVD length videos that are DVD length training videos. We've got video collections that bring together a whole bunch of videos on a specific topic. We've got discounts on classes. We've got a growing distance education program here at Personal Defense Network, and this stuff is all available to premium members. And how do you become a premium member, you ask? Well, it's simple. Just click on any of the links that you find on the site for premium membership. And if you're watching this show on the Personal Defense Network site, there's a little link down there that you can click on to join premium membership. Now, here's the deal. It's usually $39.95 or $39.99. I think it's $39.95 a year for premium membership, and it's worth every penny, believe me. But because you're watching this show, I have a deal for you. Such a deal for you. If you sign up for premium membership and you go to the checkout and you put in all your information, there's a little box there that says coupon code or discount code. I don't remember what it says, but if you put in this code, Grant10, Grant, the number 1, the number 0, all one word, Grant10. Put that in there, and you'll get your first year of premium membership at Personal Defense Network for only $10. That's a screaming deal. In fact, I got an email from a fellow this week who said, hey, thanks for the code. I signed up for premium membership, and he said it's causing a little bit of problem because I'm watching so many DVDs. My girlfriend keeps yelling at me because there are just that many DVDs to watch.
Well, maybe she should be watching them too.
Yeah, exactly. So check that out. Sign up for $10. I mean, come on. You spend that much at Starbucks every day, and you do. Grant10, Grant, the number 1, the number 0, all one word. Get your first year of premium membership at Personal Defense Network for only $10. Such a deal. Isn't that a great deal? Man.
It's a screaming deal.
It's a screaming deal.
Do it.
So we've got a few minutes left, and it's been a great conversation. And
Can I share a story?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. And it just happened today.
Oh, so I haven't heard this yet.
No.
Oh.
In class, since we're talking about, college campuses and personal defense and so forth, in class today, the way the class is structured is we have discussion time. They usually talk about the assignment that they had. Then we do warm up. Then we do the physical stuff. So in the discussion part of class today, in whatever we were talking about, we had one female bring up, and this is a class of 24. We had one person bring up the fact that she had been raped and that this information was invaluable and she wished she had known it before. Well, that had made someone else raise their hand and share the same thing. And then another. And then another. 4 women in that class, 4 students in that class of 24 were brave enough to admit that they had been raped. There may have been more, But those were the ones who stood up and said, and that's the environment that we create in class. I tell them we're a fighting family and we're here to support one another. And after 4 weeks, they felt that they could do that and share that and tell them, these other females in the class, look, if this hasn't happened to you, you really need to pay attention so it doesn't. But here's what I wanted to get, which was crazy because that's what, almost 25% of the class. Then another girl raises her hand and she's like, hey, I have something to share too. And I said, oh, okay, what's that? She said, in the last 4 weeks, the stuff that you gave me helped me get out of an assault last week. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, I was assaulted last week. Now, it was not sexual in nature, and it was in broad daylight. And she went on to explain. I said, well, you got it. What happened? Do you want to share? And she said, yes, I'll share. So she went to a restaurant to get some food and then was going to walk back to her dormitory and eat the food. And by the time she had, is mid-afternoon, sunny, bright college campus, walking on High Street, one of the main streets, had to go through the crosswalk. So the traffic light changed. The crosswalk said, okay, you can walk now. Well, there was a guy in front of her, and he was kind of mumbling to himself. And she said, well, excuse me, I need to use a crosswalk. Whatever it was set him off, started screaming at her, got to the point where he was able to put her in a bear hug. Yeah, physically assaulted her. And at that point, we had worked on some escapes. And so she did an escape from that position. And she said, I hit him in the nose a couple of times. I don't know. I hit him in a couple of places. I'm not really sure. You know how that is. It's chaotic. But she ran back to her dorm, called 911. And come to find out, this particular person had been assaulting females on campus for a few weeks and he hadn't been caught. And just that little bit of information, just that little bit. And I asked her, I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Do you think you would have responded the same way had you not taken this class? Because I thought, well, maybe she had some experience from before or whatnot. And she said, no, I wouldn't have. It was because of this class. And she said, it was because of you. And I said, no, you get to own this. This is what you did. I wasn't there. I may have given you some of the information, but you get to own this. This is your victory. This is you taking care of you. And that's what these classes are all about. And that's what these students need to know, that they have the ability to do that. And within a short 4-week period, 8 hours of training, she was able to do that. I'm sure you could probably do it depending upon the person. You don't even need 8 hours of training. But again, it's proof positive that you can change a life by just giving somebody some information to save their life.
I think that's awesome. And I think one of the things that folks, if you're sending kids to college, one of the things that you should maybe factor into your college decision is whether or not the college offers reality-based self-defense classes like this. I'm sure not every college does, but that's one of the things you should probably look into and make sure that your student signs up for them first thing.
Absolutely. There was an article, and I can share this one with you as well if you're not familiar with it, down in Florida. There was an article, a Central Florida State University, something like that, where they wrote an article. There are so many people, so many students at their university that want to sign up for self-defense classes. They don't have enough teachers to teach it. They have a wait list. Ohio State has a wait list.
Wow.
Right.
Incredible. Very quickly.
Yes.
We don't have a lot of time. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, I personally, Julie at midohioimb.com is my email. I have a website, midohioimb, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that stuff. And can I talk about the new thing?
Sure.
Women'sDefenseNetwork.com is it's a brand new organization where we've got all kinds of personal defense, whether it's armed or unarmed, physical fitness, all in one spot. Go there, check it out, womensdefensenetwork.com.
Cool. And that's really I'm going to use this word. It may be wrong, but it's really a new sisterhood of women who are interested and responsible for their own self-defense. I think it's awesome. And I wish the everybody involved with the project the best of luck making that nationwide and getting it a household name.
Thank you.
So thanks for being on. It was awesome.
From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome. Of course, you're welcome here anytime. You know that. You know you can come on anytime.
We love you. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, everybody, very quickly, don't forget our next show, which is 2 weeks from tonight on the 15th of February. We're going to have another awesome, interesting, terrific show. So be sure and check in that 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Of course, you can always get the recording here at Personal Defense Network. So be sure and catch us again 2 weeks from tonight. Of course, emails always welcome. Grant@grantcunningham.com. Love to get those emails. Some great things like the fellow who told me about signing up for premium membership. How wonderful that was. Of course, my website, www.grantcunningham.com. You can read my blog there. I write an interesting blog.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. And I was fishing for a compliment. But grantcunningham.com, you can read my blog. You can check out my training schedule. For instance, in March, I'll be in Phoenix, Arizona, not Ohio. I'll be in Phoenix, Arizona, teaching my Threat Center revolver class, all about how to use a revolver to defend yourself. So you can check that out. You can sign up there, all that kind of thing, and find out about all the other stuff that's going on, including all the books that I have available. And don't worry, there's a new one coming out soon. Yes. And so we'll see everybody, hopefully, 2 weeks from tonight on the 15th of February, right here for Training Talk. Good night, everybody.
Good night.